Hello, welcome to Citizens for Global Solutions Minnesota. I'm Katya. Citizens for Global Solutions Minnesota is a nonprofit organization based in the state of Minnesota in the United States. Every third Thursday of every month, we host a global movies discussion about a movie based in a true events or a documentary chosen to expand our horizons and to educate us about important topics. The event is free and open to anyone. If you want to learn more about CGS work, please visit our website at www.globalsolutionsmn.org and follow us on Twitter and Facebook pages. Our Facebook is Global Solutions MN, and our Twitter is CGS_MN. As part of our program, we recommended the documentary called Operation Toussaint, Operation Underground Railroad and the Fight to End Modern Day Slavery. Ladies and gentlemen, to share the extraordinary story of Operation Underground Railroad and the outstanding work to end human trafficking, I present you Sherri Nipko, the Development Manager at Operation Underground Railroad. Sherri, thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you for coming and being here with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you to all of you for being here. It's great to be able to share this opportunity to help others to learn more about human trafficking and what's happening in the world and what we are doing as an organization about it. So happy to be here. What I'm going to do first, I know that you've all watched the documentary, but I'm going to do a quick slide presentation basically on the generalities of human trafficking itself. And then I'm happy to go into a little more discussion on what O.U.R is doing now and answer any questions as well. So I'm going to share my screen and present maybe, because I love technology. There, can you see it?
Yes.
Technology, sometimes I like and sometimes I do not. So I guess this is just my cover page. I actually had somebody else make it for me, and let me move this up here so I can see all of you. And then Katya, if you'll just, if somebody does have a question or you have a comment, just let me know, all right?
Yes.
Okay, so like she said, my name is Sherri Nipko. I'm a development manager here at Operation Underground Railroad. If you have any questions, my email is sherri@OURrescue.org. The way I got here, actually, years ago, as they were just getting started, I started to volunteer, and I worked with them just on a volunteer basis. They were a grassroots effort. I started out by answering emails once a week as a volunteer as they came in, and gradually it's just grown. And then I went from a volunteer to a part-time employee, part-time, and now full-time on the development team. And it's grown quite a bit just in the last year, and we're really thrilled about that. So, because we can impact more children's lives. So just O.U.R's mission to shine a light worldwide on the global epidemic of child sex trafficking, and in so doing, rescue more children from slavery and assist law enforcement to seek justice for those who violate children. While our focus remains on children, we assist survivors of all ages to bring them safety and healing. We place survivors on a path to recovery by partnering with vetted aftercare providers or by placing them with families. Human trafficking is one of the fastest growing criminal enterprises in the world. It's a $150 billion industry. It's estimated that there's 40.3 million people in various forms of trafficking currently. That's probably a conservative estimation. That includes all types of trafficking. And of that 40 million people, 25% of those are children. That's a lot of children in the trafficking world. If you think about it, one of the reasons why it's the fastest growing, the drug trade is something where you can sell a drug one time. But when it comes to trafficking and selling children, especially sex trafficking, they can sell this child multiple times a day, up to 20 times a day, sometimes for years. And so you can see how it's just growing. What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is modern day slavery in which traffickers use force, fraud, or coercion to control victims for the purpose of engaging in commercial sexual acts or labor services against his or her will. Oftentimes people are labor trafficked, but a lot of times they're trafficked both ways. So in trafficking, it is a low risk and high profits. Unfortunately, the risk right now is just, I wish that there was more risk, more prosecution, but it's relatively a low risk right now, and they make high profits. We know the criminal activity and buying and selling of people is, it just continues to go because the risk is so low and the profits are so high. And one of the ways we're going to be able to reduce this risk is awareness. The big thing right now is awareness. As more people learn about it, more people see the signs, more people report it, more people demand that something changes, that's when the risk starts to go get higher. The other reason why the profit is high and the risk is low is because of the demand. It's really interesting that Americans are really the #1 producer and consumer of child sexual abuse material. The demand is high. And as long as we have the demand there, we're not going to reduce that risk. So let's see. This is another graph. I didn't, somebody else put this slide together for me, but this goes over just what I had just spoke about a little bit as well. But you see the high risk, high reward, low risk, supply and demand. And then the other thing is the systemic inequalities. There's 47% of people living in extreme poverty are under 18 years old. That creates this situation. Extreme poverty perpetuates the vulnerabilities to be trafficked. It's not the only indicator, but it is a strong one. So let's see. The number of prosecutions is shockingly low for an industry that victimizes an estimated 40 million people. That is something that we're working on and that we're trying to change, but it is low. On my thing. Child sex trafficking has been reported in all 50 states. I don't think a lot of people even realize that and recognize it, that all 50 states have reported it. The extent of family involvement in the trafficking of children is up to 4 times higher than in the trafficking of adults. So oftentimes this isn't even a situation of pulling the child out and putting them back with the family because the families who got them into it. There's a higher percentage of identified children are trafficked for sexual exploitation than for forced labor. So children mainly, there is some forced labor, but it's a higher percentage that it's for sexual exploitation. There's a number of ways that they can be trafficked, children, through street prostitution, in adult nightclubs, illegal brothels, sex parties, motel rooms, hotel rooms, and other locations throughout the world and the United States. The main part of control by these traffickers are psychological manipulations. The way that they recruit, and we like to, at O.U.R, you're seeing a child on a swing, we like to create hope and light, to remember the childhood, because it's such a dark topic. We want to be able to see people, to be able to see children for who they are and who we want to help. But if we go into what the traffickers use, a lot of times people think that the way they're going to do it, it's a physical violence from the beginning. That's what people mostly think. But what they do, they're very talented. They're very good at what they do, is they look for those needs, those vulnerabilities, and they take a long time to groom them a lot of times, and they exploit those vulnerabilities. So some of the needs might be, especially in areas with poverty, physiological needs, your food, your water, your warmth, your rest, those things that those children are needing. Sometimes it's security and safety. They'll come in and pretend for a certain amount of time to care for them and to love them. They'll give them love. They'll give them, they're very good at going in and finding out what what they're vulnerable for, and taking that vulnerability and using that to gain their trust. And then they turn on them after that. You can see as it goes up this pyramid that their friends, relationships, intimacies, the prestige and feelings of accomplishment, they'll give them all sorts of gifts. And then self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. They'll use all of these to get into those, to get those children to trust them and to go with them. I said before, family involvement and child trafficking is up to 4 times higher than adult trafficking cases, and all 50 states have reported them. As you can see on this graph, this first column, 0 to 8 years, that represents going into the trafficking. It's 0 to 8 years. The next column is 9 to 11 years old. The next year is 12 to 14. And the next column is 15 to 17. So as you can see, it's across the board. It's every age group. There is not an age group that isn't represented when it comes to children being trafficked. So online exploitation is a great thing to talk about right now, because we have had we've been shut down because of a pandemic. So as children have been home online, so have those who exploit them have been online. And it's created a really big opportunity for the traffickers, but a trap for children online. Many of the things that happen online, let's see, do I need to go to my next thing? Yeah. Is that they get groomed online. A lot of these things, like video gaming, parents may think it's just simple, and they may think that they're playing the computer, but these video games, these gaming apps, they're actually playing another person. These pedophiles will go in and they will pretend to be a child. They'll pretend, so a 13-year-old girl thinks she's playing a game with a 13-year-old boy. Then we find out later it's actually a man in his 60s who's been for months creating this friendship, finding all about her, and then possibly going in and getting her to send him some type of exploitive picture, and then he'll use that against her and he'll threaten her family. And it's a huge industry online, and the pandemic kind of created a perfect storm, so to speak, for children being online, maybe being unsupervised, not that parents didn't want to supervise, but parents trying to work from home, kids doing school from home. It just all created this perfect storm, but the pedophiles went online too. And unfortunately, it's probably gotten worse, but the way to combat that again is knowledge, knowing about it, knowing that it's out there, and talking to our children about it. So when they use the online grooming, it's a term used broadly to describe the tactics abusers deploy through the internet to sexually exploit children. It can happen quickly or over time, but at its core, it's a process of exploiting trust to shift expectations of what safe behavior is, and leveraging fear and shame to keep a child silent. So they'll get to know them, and then this child thinks that they're actually friends, and they can kind of talk them into doing anything, unfortunately. So what trafficking looks like in America, there's different things that happen. There was a story of a 40-year-old woman who was married for 19 years and actually trafficked by her husband. They came on hard times, and he wanted the rent to be paid, sent her out trafficking, and then berated her and belittled her and kept doing that. And that happened right here in the United States. Another one, a mom of a 13-year-old sold her daughter online to different men, and they lived in $1 million home. So it's not just poverty that is getting it. It's anywhere. So we want to be very knowledgeable of that's happening. There was also another mother in the United States. She sold her 3 teenage daughters for $50. She called it a package deal. She actually advertised it on Craigslist. Her daughters were 13, 14, and 16. She charged $50 for 1 hour. The men would come to the house, pay the $50, and basically rape her daughters while she left for an hour. She would then return home when the hour was over. The 3 daughters' performance in school started to drop. Their self-confidence dropped. Their personalities changed. The oldest daughter attempted suicide multiple times. And as people started to notice them and recognize these things and started to investigate, authorities found out, and they went to the home, and the 3 girls were rescued. So again, you can see how really what we can do is the big part of it is being aware, knowing that it's happening, and watching out for these children and for behaviors. But sex trafficking can involve family members like that, but there's also other ways who can happen, where it can happen. Those who run away can be picked up by traffickers, usually within 24 to 48 hours. So runaways are a big risk at being trafficked. And then the internet as well. So another story, 9-year-old Ava, she started chatting with a boy online, and this one wasn't a gaming room. She was just chatting with them. He seemed to be very nice and presented himself as being just a few years older than her. She grew up in an abusive environment in Central America, and so she turned to social media to find connection. As they developed a relationship online, the boy asked her for explicit pictures. Now, remember, this isn't somebody that just asked her immediately and she sent them. They created a relationship. This person had groomed her and got her to trust them. She ended up sending those pictures. After she sent the first picture, the boy on the other end of the chat revealed that he was really a 70-year-old man who lived in Florida. He then took those pictures and posted them publicly for others to see. And so he exploited her. Being even in a different country, he was able to exploit her over and over and over again. They get very fearful of anything else that would happen. But she felt like then, as he had these pictures and he would threaten her with more things, that as he asked her to do other things, that she had to, and she kept complying with his requests. The law enforcement found the pictures and the man had uploaded, and they worked to identify Ava. They identified her and they rescued her. Not only was she being exploited online, but she was also being abused by close family members. So she was placed in an aftercare home that O.U.R supports in Central America. Last month, actually it wasn't last month because this slide was created before. It was a few months ago, but the O.U.R aftercare team was able to join Ava and some other survivors to help her celebrate a birthday. And they enjoyed food and music together, and she's had lots of up and downs, but it's a very linear process to progress and to recover from this type of exploitation. O.U.R aftercare will stand by her. They'll continue to stand by her and help her through this full journey that she has now. Where to report? So a lot of times people say, what do we do? Where to report? Who do we go to if we suspect something? The main thing is 911, your local law enforcement is going to be the thing. But also if you see CSAM, and it's called Child Sexual Abuse Material, CSAM, we do not call it child pornography because it's sexual abuse material. Also the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, if somebody's gone. The Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-888-373-7888. That's actually something that I have in my phone, so that if I see something suspicious, we want to not report everything, but when you start to see, the more you learn, you'll start to see things that say, hey, this could be something, and calling that hotline and letting them know, then they can research it. I actually listened to a survivor talk one time, and she says, sometimes people are afraid to call the hotline or to call the police when they think somebody could be in trouble. And she says, it's a public service. That's what it's there for. And then they can investigate it and look. And so these are things that you can do, call these numbers. Other ways you can help and get involved with O.U.R is to donate. We are nonprofit. Everything we do comes off of donations. We cannot do what we do without the support of the community. And I'll talk a little more about what we do. Volunteer, we have a whole volunteer program. In different cities around the country, they go out and they do awareness booths. They actually will do like screenings of Operation Toussaint, just like you just did, and have a speaker come just to raise awareness. You can shop on our website. We have products on our website that the funds go to our missions. And we also have survivor made products. So we buy from survivors and then sell those on our shops. Join the Abolitionist Club. What the Abolitionist Club is with O.U.R, those who donate monthly, and it can be $5 to whatever amount you want, but monthly helps us to budget, to know what we can do. So that's something else that you can do. And you would be surprised what a small amount of money can do. I am part of a project with a 12-year-old girl right now in the Dominican Republic that we are trying to get. Her father was murdered, and she's probably being trafficked right now. We're not really sure, but we're trying to help her. But it's as simple as getting a birth certificate so she can be in school. The birth certificate, like a couple of $100s, but they can't afford it. If she can't get in school, that's one more hit against her. If she can get into school and start to get an education and be educated. So it's a small amount of money can go a long ways to help those who are in harm's way. Some other things, $10 even, somebody can say, well, what can $10 do? Well, when we do perform a rescue, $10 can buy a meal for that child who was just rescued. And so any amount of money can do something and help. These are some other things. I think we already went over most of those. Like I said, I didn't put all of these slides together. These are some other online resources that you can go to learn more. We support anybody who supports fighting human trafficking. So we're happy to share information and share other websites. O.U.R has a promise, and I've always found this very powerful. To the children who we pray for daily, we say, your long night is coming to an end. Hold on, we are on our way. And to those captors and perpetrators, even you monsters who dare offend God's precious children, we declare to you, be afraid, we are coming for you. And that's our promise. That's what we do at O.U.R. That's what we focus on is rescuing these children, but also prevention and then helping along their path once they've been rescued. I'm going to exit. That is my slide. I'm going to stop sharing so I can just talk for a moment. So that's just a basic rundown on human trafficking, but I would love to talk a little more. A few things about O.U.R right now. We've grown a lot just in the last year. What we're doing across the world, we're now in 28 countries. And I was in a meeting just this morning and found out we have now supported law enforcement in all 50 states. So that's just a great thing. So a few things to be aware of. In other countries, we do missions. We work with law enforcement, but we are part of the mission. Basically undercover, like I said, the main consumer of child sex trafficking is Americans. So our guys are really good at doing undercover in other countries. So we will do missions along with law enforcement. And we also train law enforcement in other countries. They have a more limited law enforcement, and so we'll go over there and train. In the United States, we have good law enforcement. So we're not a law enforcement agency, but we will come in with our funds and we will support law enforcement where budget shortfalls happen to give them the tools they need. One of those big things right now is canines that can sniff out the child sexual abuse material. And those are dogs that we train and go into different law enforcement agencies in order to help them with their investigations. So we've grown a lot and we're doing a lot of things, but I just want to open up to questions after you've watched the documentary. And I'm looking to see your catches putting the information in there. I appreciate that. Thank you. I've never been one that's good at speaking, doing slides, and watching the chat. So
thank you so much, Sherri. It's so important what O.U.R is doing and what each one of you speakers are doing, coming to our different events and organizations. That I know that we are fighting for your time. I know that, and the others who have been talking to me can witness how much we have to, fight for having one of you coming and speaking for us. So I do appreciate you, and I know that everybody who is here now watching, but also it's going to be recorded, so everybody who will watch will appreciate this work. I think I would like to start this part of our event asking you a question. So everybody watched the documentary, and there are a few others, and there is a movie that's coming, and I know because of COVID was delayed a little, but I would like you to speak a little bit. So the O.U.R was founded by Tim Ballard, and he was a special agent. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit of his backstory.
Yeah, so he was a special agent with the government. He investigated child crimes. He originally didn't want to go into that, but he ended up there. And then he I'm just going to do a quick synopsis of it, but he kind of hit roadblocks because he would find these children, but he couldn't rescue them because they were out of his jurisdiction. They were in other countries. So he couldn't, and he understood it. He couldn't do it. That's what the law was, the guidelines. And so he wanted to find a way. He just couldn't stand not being able to rescue children that they knew was there. So he wanted to find a way to be able to do that. And that was going out on his own with a nonprofit, and then being able to work with and train these other governments and law enforcement in these other countries. So he did that. One of the operation, and I'm trying to think, I confuse sometimes different documentaries. We have a few that are going to be coming out this year. And so we're really excited about that. And sometimes because I watched them all, I confuse which one is which. But his story, in Operation Toussaint, when you see him with those two little kids that they got at that orphanage, those two kids he ended up adopting. Did they say that at the end of the movie?
Yes.
Yeah, they did. Okay. So they're home now. They live in Utah. They're part of his family. So he has 9 kids. He does amazing work with what he does. But he really took a leap of faith just because he saw what was happening, and he couldn't turn a blind eye to it. And it's been phenomenal what has happened. And even just in the last year, what has happened. So that's kind of in a nutshell. Tim has just carved this. The operators, the undercover operators, are all people like him that come from the Navy SEALs, CIA. They come from law enforcement. They've had years of experience, and that's who our operations team is. But we now have operations teams we've split it up into 5 different regions around the world. And we're starting in each region, where we're building it out in each region. And we're doing the same thing with our aftercare teams.
Okay, we have a few questions from our audience. The first one is, what do canine dogs locate?
So canine dogs can sniff out like the SD cards and things like that that contain the child sexual abuse material. So when they go into a raid, when they do an investigation, they go into a raid, oftentimes this material is hidden, and then they have to take months and months to find it on hard drives. Well, these canines can go in, they can sniff it out, they can find it quickly, and they can prosecute that much faster, because the sooner we can get that pedophile off the streets, the more children that are not getting hurt. So they're very good. I've seen them in action. One of them, if you're on social media, one of them is, they often show him on O.U.R's social media pages. His name is Chewy. In fact, Chewy even has his own social media page. But these canines, and a lot of them aren't out there. We don't post or share information on any law enforcement's dogs or information unless they choose to. So we don't always give all that information out, but Chewy is one that's out there, and that's all they do. They're not police dogs that take down people or chase people down. That's all they do. They are trained to be able to sniff out child sexual abuse material. So that's what they do.
Who does this dog belong to? To private citizens or to law enforcement?
They belong to the law enforcement agency, but that agency has to request it because they have to have a handler or a trainer in place. They have to be able to handle it. So it's not just whoever wants, when there's a lot of preliminary things in order to be able to place those canines. But we placed, I believe, 17 canines last year with 15 different law enforcement agencies, which is just phenomenal.
So you said how many countries you were, active right now, and do you have an idea which countries do not cooperate with O.U.R?
No, and that's not even something I would be at liberty to say. We talk about regions a lot and not countries, because they're always trying to build those relationships. So that's left to our international team to say, but it's just building relationships, finding the right people within governments, with law enforcement, trying to find those who are not corrupt in different regions and different areas. So we've done a lot of work there. So like I said before, we're in 28 countries now working with them, but and knowing the right people to work with within those countries. So, but I don't have those. I don't have the actual names for you. I'm not able to give that out.
Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't help much if we point out the ones that are not helping. As you said, we're trying to build a relationship. Perhaps a country that's not willing to cooperate today would change tomorrow. So you want to not burn any bridges. So it's good way of.
And we are very focused that way with domestic law enforcement as well. If somebody says, no, we don't want anything to do with you right now, we say, that's great. But if down the road they say, hey, we need your help, we say, great, we're happy to help. So always our focus is on building relationship, building awareness, and doing what we can to eradicate the trafficking of children. That's always our focus.
Right. We have one question here from Gail, and then we are going to Christy. Gail asks, why do you think that most of the demand is from the United States? I think it is.
Yeah, the main reason is pornography being so prevalent. A lot of people will talk about this. Pornography is out there, and they talk about how it'll affect your brain, and you'll start to people will get hit seeing one thing, and then over time they need more and more of different things to give them the same sort of high that they get, the same feelings that they get off of viewing it. And so, not everybody's going to go that direction, but there are a lot, and pretty soon they're dabbling in something different. And it just goes that way. Another thing, there's a lot of, like I said before, our guys can go undercover in other countries because they have that American look. The other thing is, I think that just even that we tend to be a country who travels more. So traveling overseas to be able to buy it and to purchase it is another thing. There's a lot, I think, that goes into it, but from my perspective, from where we sit, trying to raise awareness and help people understand pornography is just a big part of this that drives that demand.
Yeah. We have Christy with a question.
I missed how long you've been going. How many years have you?
Tim retired from, and I wish I had that in 2014, I want to say, is when he started. The first year he started it. And like they started with 2 people. It was just, he walked away from his government job, and it's grown. To tell you how much we've grown though, just in the last year, we've gone from about 25 employees to just under 100. Most of that is creating other regions in other countries. Our aftercare, we've really grown as people has realized the problem, and so we're able to rescue more.
Okay, and can I have a follow-up? And so, I guess the question is, do you have employees in other countries? And connected to that, Katya is actually one of, and I don't know if Fadia's on here too, but they're international Fulbright Humphrey Fellows. And for years we ran, and are still bringing anti-trafficking human rights leaders from around the globe here every year. So I've worked with a lot of both law enforcement folks who've worked on the anti-trafficking. And so if there are individuals that we know that are working on these kind of trafficking, the trafficking work in other countries, are you looking for partners and still trying to expand that network globally?
Yeah, they're always willing to talk to and work with others. Absolutely. As far as, and that's just on the investigation end. Is that what you're referring to? Most of their teams, they're building out right now. Some of the regions, there's only 1 employee with that region right now because they're building it. They're modeling it after the way we've modeled it here. Other regions, we have like about 20 employees there that they're starting, and same thing, but they're always looking to build to make those connections. So if there's something like that you want to further discuss, you can email me and we can get those connections to the right people.
Okay, and you have employees actually physically that are from those countries, or is it all US based employees that just go and work with others in those countries?
We have both. We have both. So some of it is because a lot of, we're in some areas, we're more advanced here. So taking who's here and taking it there, but we also respect the countries and where they're at and their growth. For example, our aftercare. So we don't go through and build our own aftercare centers. What we do in the different regions is we find aftercare centers and we vet them very strong. And then we support those centers that are already there in those countries. They know their country better than we do. They know cultural things better than we do. But we support them, but we vet them. We look at their success rates and things like that. So as far as we support those aftercare homes. We're not building our own aftercare homes and sending people to them. So aftercare is that one way that is happening that way. Does that make sense? Did I answer what you asked?
Yes, thank you very much.
Sometimes there's a lot of components to it.
Yeah, well, and that's, and with the fellows that would come, they'd be a part of all of those. Some would be on the rescue side, or some others were on the care. I mean, it's obviously a complex issue. And
another, the goal to go along with that, and one of the other questions of what countries aren't you in or who aren't working with? One of the things that we will not go in and do rescues until we have aftercare on the ground, until we have a vetted place to take them. a vetted home, resources for them, because rescuing a child with nowhere to take them just means they're just going to go right back. And sometimes that can be even more traumatic. So part of this whole process of getting in other countries is making sure that the aftercare is on the ground and ready to go as well. And when we do a rescue, our aftercare is on site with that rescue. So it's very complex, but it all works together.
Thank you, Christy. We have a question from Dick. I see you all raising their hands. Be patient. So Dick is asking, what is the current state of US law relating to trafficking issue? Are we pretty active or dragging our feet, or not very willing to address the issue, since trafficking succeeds because of customers who have resources to provide the profit, and we are a wealthy country?
Well, I think, and I think you would know this as well, Katja, is that I think they're trying. I think, having the budgets to investigate it, having the people to do things, there's, again, it's another complex issue. Also, being able to, especially now with online stuff, being able to find it is hard, and it takes a lot of time and effort and investigation. So we just, and that's why with the domestic law enforcement, because we're not a law enforcement agency, we support law enforcement when they need more tools to do their job. We'll give scholarships to law enforcement agencies to go to seminars on human trafficking to learn more, and just different things like that. So there are some states are better than others. There are reports out there in different places. They actually grade the states based on what they're doing, and but it involves all components. It involves investigations, rescues, prosecutions, aftercare, all the different components. So I wish I had just a really good, solid answer on that one. But and I will say this. And we said we're not very willing to address the issue. Human trafficking, as you guys watching that documentary, it is a hard topic to cover. People don't want to know about it. I mean, they don't want to know that it exists. It's hard. It's ugly. It hurts. I actually talked to a donor yesterday, and he's really interested. And he and I were talking about the documentary because he just watched it as well. And he says, we want to keep donating because we love what you guys are doing. But my wife, she doesn't want to hear anything about it. She can't stomach it, but she'll keep donating. And we recognize that. But that is also one of our problems, is because it's hard to talk about, it's hard to face. So that's one of our goals, to do things like this to create more awareness.
And thank you for saying that. I just wanted to also to add to everything you said. We that are in human rights, and I wanted to say our organization has been doing more human rights since I became the president, just in the beginning of 2021, just because of my background. And Christy is in human rights education. She's a PhD in education. So I think I can say how difficult it is, because it's not obligation of everybody knowing, what human rights is. It's not obligation, but it should be. And there is this here in Minnesota, and perhaps Christy might be able to elaborate what they are doing, a movement to have human rights in the school. So people starting in the early ages understanding what is human rights, because some people, they just don't want to hear because they think it's boring. Sometimes they think it's hurtful in a way, like the person you mentioned. And it is sometimes. There are topics that are hard to swallow, but we still need to address because they are criminal. Like human trafficking and child marriage, we need to have some people who can swallow and they can stomach and address that. And our organization, Citizens for Global Solutions, Minnesota, we are trying to bring the education about those topics. So while we are not doing what you're doing, you know, Tim and his teams go and travel to places where they rescue people. So while we are not doing this, we are bringing you to tell what you did, and also bringing other speakers to talk about the different things that are happening in different parts of the globe. And this is a way of contributing to, you know, clarifying the human rights issue and matter, because sometimes people actually don't quite understand, and they think that's something annoying or that we don't need to know, but we do because perhaps today it's not exactly touching your home, but we never know, maybe touching a neighbor or a person that you know in your school and your work. We needed to be aware somehow. And so I hope those events, they are able to bring that awareness to people. We have another question from Marcy, and then I go to Bharat. Marcy is asking, what kind of supportive care do children receive after rescue? And what kind of behaviors might alert someone that exploitation may be occurring? And I know you have a beautiful after rescue, so I'd love that you share with us.
Yeah, the supportive care for children after rescue, you know what? A lot of that depends on the country they're in and what their situation is. Every rescue and every type of abuse was different, and where they came from. So every survivor is going to need something different. And so our aftercare is focused completely on the one. It's not a cookie cutter type of aftercare. It's on what that one needs. And the way we're able to do it, vetting these different aftercare places, we can find what the one needs, and then maybe we can support that. So as far as they'll get pulled out, they'll get therapy. They'll assess whether or not it's safe for that child to return back home. If they were groomed and taken out of their home and their home is a safe place to go, after a certain amount of time, they'll be returned back to the home, but they'll go through a process of supportive aftercare things, different therapies and stuff in order for them to be able to handle that. But sometimes they can't go back home. And so that's a whole different situation. There's homes where there's children who are placed in aftercare homes where they can be adopted out of them. They get them schooling, they get them caught up. These children that get that are trafficked, there's a different level. Some of them may have some education and some of them have never had an education. So it's going to be assessing where they need to be in school and what kind of education they need. And were they ever able to even get into school because of, like I said before, a birth certificate or something just to get them in. It just looks different for everyone. There are some that have, once they get that emotional part gone through, that mental part, they may have scars or injuries that just remind them on a daily basis of what they went through. And then at that situation, some of that aftercare will be a surgery to correct something. There's equine therapies. Some of them work with horses. There's just a whole array, and we're always looking into different avenues because there's, as we learn more, we're learning more about different avenues that work, and different things work for different people. So it's really not a cookie cutter answer. I kind of keep saying that, don't I? The whole thing it's just so different, but, and then what kind of behaviors might alert someone that exploitation? One thing you can do, like on our website, you can go on and there's a human trafficking training. It's about an hour and it goes through a few different things. We're actually going to be redoing that because it could be a little bit better, but there's there's something watching behaviors. If you see someone, especially close to you, that all of a sudden starts having different behaviors, different personalities, watch for those things. One of the things is eyes down all the time. Generally, when somebody's being trafficked, they won't look up. Their eyes will be down all the time. There's situations like, it was interesting. My husband used to not that he didn't pay attention, but this wasn't his thing that he was researching all the time, like I was and looking into. And he did a training, and then we went out of town. We went to a hotel, and actually he did the training after we went out of town, but he sat down, he said, something has bothered me for a long time. We went to this, and he told me the place where he went. And he says, I remember seeing something that I was really uneasy with, but I didn't know why I was uneasy. And then after I went through the training, he says, that could have been somebody being trafficked. And we were at a hotel room. I said, it absolutely could have been. And then we had the conversation, what would we have done if I had known what I know now? And I said, we would have called the Human Trafficking hotline. We would have reported where it was at, what was happening, what room they went in. And then you don't approach them. You don't approach a trafficker. You're going to put yourself in harm's way. But there's different things. They'll often have, sometimes just like on their neck or shoulder somewhere, they'll have a tattoo of initials. That's how they kind of get marked sometimes, but not always, because people get tattoos. So there's a lot of different things, but a lot of them is the behaviors. And just the more you learn, the more you'll start to recognize things like that. So it's hard to say specifically what to look for. Maybe you guys in your work, Christy, you might even have something more with that.
Well, the one thing that I think is the newest thing I've heard is the girl who was saved with the hand signal from TikTok, the help signal, if people go like this and then cover the hand motion, which because we've working with a lot of folks, we were trying to think of creative avenues of both advocacy for individuals who are in the traffic situation, and because it is scary if they're trying to reach out and so
I heard a story too, close where just a waitress, she was suspicious of something just looked off. Sometimes that's all it is. And I think that's part of the campaign of raising awareness, is when something looks strange, question it. We tend to, but again, not confront the person. But in this situation, the waitress just actually wrote on a napkin and showed it to her, "Are you okay?" And the girl shook her head no, and the waitress went back and called the police. So really looking for things that just look, I think we all have that conscience in us that kind of knows when something seems off, but the more you'll learn, the more you'll see it. But not to make us paranoid either, but just to be aware of.
Well, and Minnesota is very high in terms of trafficking. And for those, I think many of you probably, know, but where I graduated, Hopkins High School, is, out in a western suburb here. And, there was a trafficking, situation of girls with another girl on the cheerleading team. And it's just, it becomes so, it's really prevalent. So yes. I'm so happy that you're sharing this, and it's nice to hear about newer organizations. And you're collaborating with organizations like Polaris and other organizations as well.
Yeah, well, we support anybody who supports. We're not like trying to compete with anybody, or we're thrilled and happy to share any information, and if anybody who wants to join the fight to fight human trafficking. We do not believe this is a political issue. We do not believe it's a religious issue. We do not believe it's a one country issue. This is a human issue. One person should never be sold. And that's just, this is just that we should all agree that no one should be sold. That this modern day slavery should not exist. So that's our take on it, is that anybody who wants to jump in this this fight, we're happy that they're there, and if we can collaborate in some way, that's great.
We have a question from Bharat.
Yeah, thank you, Sherri. You know, I just saw the film before this talk, and my mind is just buzzing with so many different things in there. First of all, if you don't mind, I have several questions kind of embedded in what I have to ask. First of all, is your organization kind of MOD, you know, modus operandi, like a rescue squad? Because that's what I saw was done with exemplary manner.
Yeah.
And
So
if that's the case, are there other rescue squad stories that your operation has that would, you know, might be interesting to know about?
So we've kind of, and in that Operation 2 Saint, that was early on. They modeled the way they did types of operations. Again, you notice that they worked with the law enforcement in their area, but it's taking that model that they're developing and teaching it to other law enforcement who want to learn it. And I think that it showed it very well in that film. We've gone on to fine tune it because that film it's been a while since then. We have a couple of others. Hopefully they're going to be coming out this next year. And sometimes I hate to even say it because we don't control when they're released. We don't own them, but Operation Triple Take will be coming out, and that's actually, it's got more in some cases like that it shows that people like the jump team stuff. They like to see that happening. And,
well, another thing I saw in the film that kind of caught my attention is that amazing fundraising, which started with 100,000 on. I mean, is that kind of a level of support your organization receives regularly? And if so, what is the kind of budget that your organization operates with? And are there government agencies that support, you know, and fund at all?
Yeah, we don't
just
have
donations from anyway.
We're nonprofit. We work off of donations. 2020, what happened in that film when it showed, you're talking about at the end of the film with Tony Robbins, right? That was a fundraiser.
I don't know who the host was.
Who the guy was.
He gives 100,000 and then somebody.
Yeah, and he's a big supporter. He has put money in, but it's all donation. We're donation based, and just as people have recognized it's happening, they want to do something. We try to be very good stewards with those funds, to use those funds well, but we are a nonprofit, and that's how we get our funds, is off a donation. But 2020 was an interesting year, and I think as much as the pandemic created online grooming and problems that way, it also, I think it's just because people were home, didn't have much. 2020, we had a huge rise in people recognizing what was happening. With that, we had some bumps too about trying to understand what is accurate information and what is not accurate information. But we had a huge growth in 2020, and then it's just continued on into 2021 as people recognize the problem, and they're starting to see more and more coming out. So our numbers are on our website, and I haven't looked at numbers for this year, but our financials and everything are on our website. Mm-hmm. And so you can access those.
One final thing, related to your international work. Mm-hmm. Well, Haiti was international, but I heard in the conversation that India was mentioned as well, and I presume you have some partners. So now my question is, there's a very famous Indian who got a Nobel Peace Prize with Malala because of his work is essentially rescuing, children. A lot of it is mostly from forced labor and so on. They kidnap. Oftentimes, very poor parents sell their children, thinking that they'll get good life, and essentially they get exploited. And women in particular, girls in particular, are also sexually as well as boys. Question I have is, have your organization doing anything in conjunction with them at all?
Yeah, I couldn't speak to that. Anything our organization does in other countries, we do work with law enforcement and government to make sure we're working within the law. So whether or not that particular organization that you were speaking of, that they're working directly with them, I wouldn't be able to speak to that.
Well, it's too bad Nobel Committee didn't know about your organization, because you could have given you the prize as well. Thank you very much. I don't want to take more time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bharat. Next question from Fred.
Well, I would like to, I did write it down, but at the risk of being naive, I'd really like to think that every state and every country welcomes you with open arms. But I'm guessing that there is some resistance that you find from time to time. And I'm wondering if you could just speak a little to what the resistance or challenges are in the United States, as well as other countries, just some points that you have, some highlights of what challenges or resistance.
Yeah, I think some of the challenges in the beginning, because we were a grassroots effort, we were a startup, people, and now we're growing a lot and really fast because we've got a proven track record. So initially, I think anytime you have any kind of startup, that's going to be part of the challenges. Resistance, sometimes it's just domestically, maybe, we're waiting for like law enforcement to ask us for help. We're not going to go in and tell law enforcement, hey, you're not doing your job right. We have incredible law enforcement across the country, and we are there to support them. So a lot of that is just as people learn more about us, because we still are a relatively small organization. We're young, but it's the growth in the last 2 years has been phenomenal. So I think that will just get better and better. But it's really interesting. The one thing that anytime you're fighting, I think anybody who fights evil, they just come up against resistance, and sometimes you just don't even know why. Why did this happen? Mm-hmm. But that's part of it too. But we're seeing there has been some resistance. Yes, there has been challenges, but I will tell you, we're also just really hopeful and just really excited about the future and the growth that is coming, that will continue to come, and the amount of children that we're going to be able to help. It's just going to continue to grow. And just because too, more people like you are doing exactly what you're doing here, and because of that, and because of you, it continues to grow because the awareness grows. So I hope that helped. Did that answer it?
Oh, it did, definitely. I just sometimes picture bureaucrats saying, no, we don't. We'll solve this ourselves to the extent we even care about it, and don't really want you trying to help us.
Yeah, that can happen. But we focus on that we're doing, and those that we're helping. And like I said before, if somebody doesn't want our help now, but later on they want it, great. We're happy for that. So good question.
Gail is asking, are customers prosecuted as well?
Yes, if they can find them and prove it. Yes, you're a human rights attorney. You probably could speak to that as much as I can, but as far as they have the evidence to prosecute them.
Yes, it depends, because we are talking about law, and I think all prosecutors are going to say the same in any country. You need to have evidence, you need to have victims, you have everything that, you know, they can make a case in order to take to court. And
Yeah.
even not knowing the laws of the entire world, you know that that's how it goes for them. So as long as they have the right evidence, they probably could. Did you have anything to add, Gail, to your question?
Well, that addresses the demand part of it. I mean, if potential customers know that they could be prosecuted, they might think twice about doing it.
Yeah, and they with the online things, I watched a lot of things where the customers know what they're doing is wrong. They'll have, with the whole online thing, they'll have multiple phone accounts and social media accounts, and they'll pop a social media account up one day and start trying to chat with a young child, and then all of a sudden that account's just gone. They've learned to work the system to keep themselves from that proof. But if the proof is there and we can prosecute them, but I think that there's, you know, again, awareness and demand from the public, and just getting things out there is going to increase all of that. But they're smart in what they do, because they know what they're doing is wrong. So
yeah, and another thing that I want, it's sad, but there are some cases where these customers, you say very correctly, Sherri, that they are smart, and the problem is that it's a lucrative business, and they pay off people who should not be doing that.
yeah.
And so they might have help from different organizations and even government. And so this has to be addressed as well, in different layers of our society. You know, while some organizations like O.U.R are rescuing, we need to see that law enforcement is actually looking for these criminals, and we need to see that no people are taking money to help those criminals. So that happens a lot. It's something very common in law for us to see, not only in the United States, but in several countries.
Yeah, again, this topic, again, just like all the others, is very complex in the way it works.
We do have a question from Jack. What have we learned from drug traffic vis-a-vis making it more difficult and less lucrative for the perpetrators? And can we apply those techniques for human trafficking?
Yeah, we would hope so, but that's what we're again, raising awareness. And the more traffickers we can take down, like we talked before on the slides, the risk versus reward, the more that we can get in and break up a trafficking ring and take those traffickers down, then they aren't as bold. So we've had operations in certain countries where we take down traffickers, and then all of a sudden those traffickers, the other traffickers in the area, aren't offering children up as much, because they start to become more afraid of getting caught. So just continuing what we're doing in all areas. Again, even though O.U.R is fairly young, the whole human trafficking and this society understanding that human trafficking is existing is fairly young. And so it's getting it out there to people, that people understand that modern day slavery is happening. There's more people enslaved now than there was in the transatlantic slave trade. So, but people don't recognize that people are in slavery conditions. So just continuing to do what we're doing, continuing to do what you're doing. And yeah, we want to get stricter laws. And, you know, there was and I can't remember, was Operation Two Saint where they, I'm confusing my documentaries now. That was where they were able to pay off the judges, and they got out, and then they were able to go back and get them. But they brought in the government. They found the law enforcement that wasn't corrupt, and they were able to go back in. So it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle, but we're going to keep fighting on the good side and fighting the battle. So.
May I
Next
ask one quick question, or is there another one in the chat?
There is a question before I will call you after. So I love that question because it's so important to talk about it. Are some victims resistant to being rescued? Thank you, Fran, for that question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes. A lot of the reasons why is that sometimes some people, this is all they know. It's all they know. But generally, most people don't want to be there, but they don't know anything else. And then people will get rescued, and they'll come out and they'll go through therapy. They'll get triggered, or a problem will happen in their life, and they don't know how to pay for their family. They don't know how to function, and they go back to what they know. And unfortunately, that does happen. With our aftercare programs, our homes that are vetted that we work with, that is one of the things that we vet, is what is their success rate and how often do they stay with the survivor. So at O.U.R, our survivors, we're with them for life. So if something happens, we're going to continue with them. Have we had some that have been rescued and then have gone back? Yes, and we've gotten them back out, and we continue to work with them. We don't ever give up on them. There's also there's situations with some of our aftercare. One that I was just told a couple of weeks ago, she was one that we had rescued, we'd worked with, and she reached out to our aftercare department. She had an infection that was just putting her down, and she couldn't work, she couldn't do anything. She had gone to the hospital, but they needed, for the medicine she needed $160. She did not have $160. She was vacillating between going back to what she knew so that somebody would take care of her. Fortunately, she reached out. We got her the medicine to continue on this journey. So that's part of our aftercare, is we stay with them, so that if those triggers, those situations happen, something as simple as needing a medication can just throw them. And we're very mindful of that. And so, yeah, when you say, do they go back? Some do go back. Some have addictions that they're just fighting through constantly. The rescue is when they show the iceberg and the tip of the iceberg is up here, the rescue is up there. And then there's all this aftercare and getting them back to where they can be healthy in society. But I want you to know too, that does happen. I've been able to experience situations with survivors that are doing well. I went with I was just with one last week, who we were helping her. She's going to be getting an apartment for her and her baby come January. And we were helping her get some of the things that she needed. She didn't have a bed, and she's got a good job, and she's doing well. And so it does work, but it's not just rescue and they're a couple of therapy classes and they're better. It's a process, and some will go back into it and then back out, and some come out and just go forward and move forward. And it's just all different circumstances. So, but to answer your question, yes, there are some that don't want to, unfortunately.
And before I send it to Christy, I wanted to add something to reinforce what you were saying. Not that you need reinforcement, but just an example. So there is, most of the world, there is the occurrence of any type of human trafficking, sex trafficking, or child trafficking. And I'm going to give you just one example. So in the former Yugoslavia, everybody knows that they broke, and there was a war, and a lot of soldiers and generals and high commanders were arrested. So the UN was there for a long time trying to pacify the situation. So there were people being trafficked. A lot of women are kept actually captive, and they were being used as sex slaves. And so there were some cases of women that were trying to escape, and as they tried, they were dragged back, because there was a chain of criminals, and they were paying off different people, even citizens, to tell and help them to keep the women kept and in the place where they wanted to keep them. And so the women were actually afraid of escaping, because they knew what happened to them when they escaped, and they knew that most of them were brought back. So they were raped, and they were beaten up, and a lot of bad things were happening to them. So their fear to escape was not because they just didn't want it, they wanted to stay. There was fear. They were in a bad situation, but if they escaped and if they were retrieved by these criminals, they knew that they would spend 1 or 2 months being beaten up and in chains. And so we needed to keep in mind that, as Sherri said, has been saying these past hours, it's a very sensitive situation. Nobody wants to be a slave of another person, but when they are there, their self-esteem, their self-confidence is not as ours, because we work, we have liberty to go out and talk to whoever we want, and they lost that, and sometimes they lost for a long time. So they are not, sometimes they are not self-aware, but sometimes they don't have a confidence anymore, and they are afraid of what's going to happen when they are recaptured, because they know that can happen. So we needed to take that in mind, and that's one of the reasons when we see something and we don't approach the person who we think is criminal, because they could harm the victim even more. So we don't know how to do, but there are people who know how to do. But that's a small example, and this that I just said to you, it's just a small example, but repeats over and over in different countries and more times than you can imagine, but it's true. We go to Christy.
I have a question, but here's my educational awareness plug, that there's a lot of trafficking and stops by when individuals, like one woman is driving from Minnesota to Wisconsin and have been rear-ended. And I mean, anyhow, if you know folks that are traveling individual, young, going on their own, if they are being followed or bumped, don't have them pull over to the side of the road. They should continue on to the next exit and try and find a police station and be on a phone. But anyhow, sorry. My question was around whether or not you've worked with any Indigenous communities and nations, tribal governments, and really, because you've mentioned the states, and I guess I'm just thinking of that other layer, knowing that there's such a high trafficking rate amongst Indigenous women.
Yeah, they are working, and they're doing a lot in those kind of areas. We don't speak specifically to those until they're coming out, but yes, because that is a high trafficking. Any area that's high trafficking, we're going to be trying to, as we grow, get into. So yes, eventually. I just can't speak to it, but we are in all different areas and all different types of trafficking. You've got the child sex trafficking, you've got labor trafficking, but there's also organ harvesting. There's just different things and it depends on which countries, which areas you're talking about, where different things are happening. So there's just it's it's very complex. So very complex.
We have a question, or we have a comment from Marcy. Children are often too traumatized and afraid to testify in these cases.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't require them to. That's why we try to go in with good evidence, and they create a model so that when they are going in, they're getting that evidence that they can have, because yeah, it's very traumatizing to have a child testify. There was, in fact, you can find it on our social media pages. There was a young girl. I'm seeing her, I'm seeing the post, but I'm forgetting all the information. I believe she was 7 or 8 years old, but she was really tough. She wanted to testify, but she was able to go in, and because of what she did, they were able, and because of what she said, they were able to go in and find 2 other victims that they weren't aware was there. So she's just like a little hero, because what she was willing to do and say in that part was she rescued two other little girls that were there.
And also I wanted to add to that, just because I know some countries, Marcy and everybody, don't require minors to testify. And although they are sometimes the only or the main source of evidence for cases, the judges might find different ways to have their evidence collected, such as getting these children speaking with psychologists and social workers aside. And because those professionals are specialists in talking to children in a nice way, in a way that's not traumatizing, because these children already went through so much, and we want to help them, not to harm them even more and cause more trauma. So there will be in different countries, and of course here in the United States we have 50 different states that deal with the problem in different ways, in the state laws, but you're gonna see different ways of dealing with that. And I have to say that in some cases, judges are very sensitive, and I'm happy that every time that I see a judge that can deal in the right way with the problem. Isn't that true, Sherri?
Yes, we want to protect the child and not, yeah.
And this is valid. This method is valid for human trafficking, child trafficking, or the children, in cases where children are witnesses, and it could be domestic violence or any type of crime that the child is a witness.
Yeah, and just remember what I was talking before, when they're being groomed, whether it's like they call the boyfriend, they create a boyfriend relationship, and they sell them the dreams that they want to have, and they build them up, or whether they're being groomed online and they learn all their vulnerabilities. They've learned to trust this person. This person knows all these things about them and knows all those things that are their hopes and dreams. And so even testifying against that person that knows how to destroy their hopes and dreams, it all goes hand in hand and works together. And so and that's another one, speaks to why it's hard for them sometimes to leave, because they're still holding on to those hopes and dreams, and that the trafficker knows how to manipulate and work them to make them afraid again of losing anything that they were hopeful for. So it's the same thing with putting a child on a stand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
we have a question from Gail again. What sort of legal penalties do traffickers face in Minnesota? Well, it's gonna
I'm
be
not from Minnesota, so
Yeah, that would be for a licensed attorney in Minnesota to respond. I'm not sure if Fred has that information, but I can get that information from I wish our local director who works in the city of Minneapolis were here, but I can get that up in our website. It's going to be easy for us. Yes.
Yeah, you can check the Minnesota Human Trafficking Task Force resources. I think you'll find.
And the other question is regarding organ harvesting. What organs are harvested? Are those children killed?
This is a really dark topic that, but it does happen in other countries, organs that can be sold on the black market, and unfortunately those children would die without those organs. So it's not a pleasant topic, but yeah.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? All right. So I would like to acknowledge the Citizens for Global Solutions Board of Directors. I would like to say thank you for sharing, acknowledge everybody who was here today. If anybody who is here or watching our recording, if you want to contact Citizens for Global Solutions, you can go to our website, globalsolutionsmn.org, or you can send us an email, cgsmn.contact@gmail.com. We also have a YouTube channel. You will find us very easily. On behalf of CGS Minnesota, I wanted to thank you all for attending this event. If you want to watch again, the recording can be found on our website and on our YouTube channel. CGS hosts events every month. Please visit our website to learn what is the next events are. In January, today is December 2021. In January, we will have we will host an event on January 20, Thursday. It's a documentary about the disappearances in Mexico. Sherri, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for O.U.R work that you were doing, and I will let you with your final thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for letting me be here and for doing what you are doing. What your group is doing is what more of the world needs to do. Just raising awareness about taking care of each other really is what it comes down to. And by you being here, learning more, looking into it more, you're shining that light. You're shining that light on darkness because it's a dark topic. People don't want to talk about it, but you're shining the light, and more, we're seeing more and more people get involved, and we're rescuing more and more children. And to every child and to every person who's trafficked, the more we know and the more we get involved, they have a chance. So thank you to all of you for what you're doing, for your interest, for your support, and thank you for inviting me to be here. So look forward to our documentaries that will be coming out next year, and I hope you choose those.
We will choose those for sure. Sherri, thank you so very much. Say my thank you for everybody who I have been bugging the entire year. We really appreciate the job and the work that you guys are doing. It's really special for everybody and for the humanity. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for being here. I hope to see you again soon in January. Happy holidays for everybody. We love you.
Take care.